putting power down, so he went directly for the pylons. But it looks like he's got, there we go, he's got a base defense in play, and he's managed to drop and destroy that last pylon. It looks like the Warp Prism's considering coming back in here, going to try to save these photon cannons, but that's way too late. Zerglings are small, they're easily killed, but they are extremely destructive against enemy buildings.
Now we do see the Warp Prism is moving along with 2 Colossus in it, getting dropped onto that high yield expansion, laying down a ton of damage. We really need to see them focus all the workers to take advantage of the ground splash damage available.
Yeah, the Colossus does a lot of splash damage. Not that great against buildings, but very effective against small units like those Zerglings. If he can get the splash off, he can do some damage. But it looks like the Zerglings, they've taken one down. He really needs a wall in front of those Colossus. They're big, they're pretty tough, but not for cost. Oh, and there's the Zealot wall that's going to help him protect him. He's got a single Hydra moving in. That's not much of a threat, but the Zerglings are going to manage to take down that Colossus, and it looks like the Zerg are going to survive a little bit longer.
That's right, and those Zerglings, as soon as they were able to get the surround on that Colossus, it really didn't have a chance anymore, especially combined with all the Hydraless backup. We do see 4 Zealots were loaded in. They're going to be moving up towards Sanki's main. They're likely going to get unloaded to try to lay down a little economic pressure. We do see one Hydralist, a lone Hydralist, just trying to defend against that Warp Prism. Now, Hydralists are especially strong. That Warp Prism escapes with only 1 HP. Are the Hydralists going to be able to catch it? We do see Zerglings following, but no, those destructible rocks save the day.
Now, the Hydralist moves much faster when it's creep, like all Zerg units, and of course it moves faster when it has an upgrade, but that wasn't fully upgraded, so it looks like he could have caught it if he had some creep in that area, but he didn't, and the Warp Prism will continue, dropping more Zealots to continue this fast and bloody raid on the Zerg Expand.
Now, difference of the Protoss shields, we do see that it's all the way back up to 40 shields already. He does have these Zealots down, trying to wreak as much havoc as he can on those drones down at the bottom. You do have the Warp Prism escaping back to the base. Now, on its way back, it was able to see Sanki's new expansion. This could be bad news.
Yeah, and it looks like both players are actually doing very well on their worker counts, and they're both resourcing fairly well. It looks like the Zerg have forgotten about their gas a little bit there. They've got none coming in at all right now, so he's sort of falling behind on gas. It means we're going to have to see more Zerglings from him and less in the air, less really effective forces. This is a really loss for him not to be resourcing his gas as well as he needs to be.
That's right. The Zerg player right now only has a lone extractor, and it was actually entirely depleted, but he likely just finished this other one. But there's only 148 remaining. It appears that those Zealots really did their job.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep the harassment up, keep the pressure on him, and it looks like while they're both resourcing very, very well, it's going to be a little bit harder for the Zerg unless he can take advantage of those high-yield resources and really make use of them in this coming fight.
Now, Warp Prism is moving around the side here. He's likely going straight for that expansion. I'm not sure that Sanki is aware that Yellow knows exactly where that expansion is. We do see a few photon cannons out there, but are they enough to hold off all of those Zerglings and Hydralisks?
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be quite a wall, and he's really protecting his expansion there while he continues to harass with this lone, badly damaged Warp Prism. It's got all its shield backs because shields regenerate very, very quickly. Oh my goodness, a couple of Colossus. That might be a problem. Moving down, tearing up those poor drones. They're going to force to run for it. It's not great against the buildings, you can see that, but still, these Zerglings don't pose a terrible, terrible threat to these Colossus in those few numbers.
Now, the problem was those Zerglings moving in are able to move so fast up to those Colossus that they actually aren't even to laser them down. We do see that they took 150 damage from only 5 Zerglings.
Yeah, that really creep speed really helps. Notice how fast they move when they enter the creep. Now, the Hydralisk might be a little bit of a problem. Oh. They do line up a little bit. He's trying to run for it, trying to get him out of there, but the Hydralisk can only... Oh, there we go! He takes down both the Warp Prism and the Colossus. Ends this endless raiding. He's got to feel good about that.
Let's see exactly what the Protoss player is going to do next. It's looking like he is cranking out another Colossi. Maybe he thinks that it's going to be a little more effective than that was. We didn't see much out of either of his Colossus there in those cases because of how fast those Zerg are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the overlapping splash of the Colossus is extremely powerful. You get 3 or 4 of these things working together. Pretty soon you're one-shotting everything that approaches you. They never even get to shoot back, and it can do terrible, terrible damage to an army, especially units like Hydralisks that line up so nicely for that splash attack from the Colossus. But he never got enough into play. He was often dealing with Zerglings, which swarm up around the Colossus, which really meant the Zerg player never felt the full wrath, the full power of the Colossus.
So you see that both players are very even in terms of resources gathered per minute, but over on the army menu, we can tell that the blue player is able to have a 400 extra Vespene gas. That normally means that he's going to have higher tech units out on the battlefield.
Yeah, and you can see he's using moving around those line of sight blockers there, trying to see what he can see. He's not seeing any Zealots hiding in there, no Protoss threats hiding out, so he can move back to his base, gather his forces, and consider his next move. And he does have the second expansion right now, so over time, this will make a big difference for the Zerg.
That's right, so back on the resource man, let's see if it's really paying off. Yes, it is. He's at over 300 extra minerals per minute than the other player. We do see one of those Colossus out there, combined with the Stalker power, providing the meat shield for the Colossus. No, but we're going to see some focus fire out of that Zerg player, trying to take down those Colossus as fast as they can. They're just dealing too much damage. There we go, one Colossus getting taken down, and the Zerg is going to pull back all those Hydralisks from getting demolished by those photon cannons.
Yeah, it looks like the Protoss player's really walled himself in here. He's really preparing for quite a siege. He's going for a longer game, hoping he can get up some higher tech units perhaps, or build a larger army. But of course, the Zerg's second expansion is going to be decisive. He really needs to move out on this map and try to do some damage.
I don't know. What is Sanki going to be doing with this sneaky drone? Is he going to be trying to expand again to another remote location? We'll find out soon. Oh, no, it's looking like he's just kind of scouting around. He's not exactly trying to build a hatchery anywhere around here. He is just concentrating on microing his army around the middle. We do have a ton of Hydralisks in play, which aren't exactly the strongest unit to have against ground forces.
Yeah, they're a little light against the ground forces, but they're extremely strong against the Colossus, of course. And they're pretty decent against the Stalkers. What the Protoss player really needs right now is good old-fashioned Zealots. They can really tear these things to pieces. Even a few Nullifiers could be helpful in a battle against these things. Oh, these Stalkers are in a lot of trouble. That's not a good place to be. They're quickly got taken down by mass Hydralisk fire, sort of a pointless loss of a couple of Stalkers.
And now we can see that Yellow is in it for the long haul with his ground forces. He is researching the Protoss ground weapons over there, so we're likely going to see a few more warp gates out of him. And yes, we're going to see this is the warp gate animation. We can see all those units. It only takes 5 seconds to get them warped in, and it reduces their creation cooldown by a full 10 seconds. So if you're able to micro and keep track of that warp gate that doesn't have a build queue, you're really going to pull ahead.
Yeah, it really helps you in a battle this large to be able to create units much more quickly, but it can make things a little bit more challenging for you because you can't queue anything up. And it looks like the Zerg player is expanding once again. Now, both these players should be using the rocks, especially the Zerg player should be tearing up these rocks in the back to crack their way into the Protoss base. He could bypass that entire front line right now if he chose to do so. But both these players have only had a few hours with the game. They're not quite aware of all the nuances yet. He has got a bunch of Banelings coming in there. Those are actually surprisingly pretty good against base defenses. They might be able to do some damage. It's a small sapper unit. They explode on contact, but he could do some damage to that front line of photon cannons if he chooses to make a push.
That's right. Those Banelings do a ton of damage to buildings. As a matter of fact, we can see now there's much different bonus damages here in StarCraft 2. The Banelings deal 55 damage to all units and an extra 45 to any structures that they hit, which means that they're going to do 100 damage each.
Yeah, they're terrible damage against base defenses. Not so great against something like a war factory or a gateway. It has so many hit points, but against those lighter structures like bunkers or against photon cannons, they can be extremely effective. Of course, that was quite a ferocious line of photon cannons and stalkers the Protoss player has in play there. So I don't know if the Zerg player is going to be able to crack down this front door or not, but it looks like he's feeling pretty frisky and might want to try it. Ooh, there's some high Templars in the back there. We can see that Psystorm is under production. He is researching it. Will it get done in time? If it does, we can see a lot of damage done to this Zerg force.
The Zerg player is going to need to make a push as soon as possible. Now, as we were talking about before, those back doors, one of the options here is that he can actually run behind his expansion. He could have made it all the way around this way to get behind the Protoss player, but he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Map familiarity is a huge part of the original StarCraft and a big part of StarCraft 2 as well. And you can see both of these forces are moving up here, moving into a position where they can engage against the enemy. It looks like there might be a little fight ahead of us.
Whoa, and it's looking like there's going to be a large fight out front. We can see that both the players out here, we do see a ton of Banelings moving into play.